Hi guys, just a quick warning that this week's episode we talk about some pretty heavy stuff, including imagery surrounding suicide and death. We also discuss deceased Aboriginal peoples. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to Spooky Mountain. I'm Steph.
And I'm Jordi, and thank you so much for joining us for our second episode.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yep.
How exciting.
We've done this now
last
week.
Yeah, this is our second episode, but our third recording, because this dum-dum didn't record my audio properly.
Oh.
So this is our second recording of this episode, but
we're learning. We're
learning. But it's also Friday the 13th today.
Spooky day.
Spooky day. So it's kind of meant to be that we record today instead.
We don't usually record on Friday. We're like, this is the perfect
day for it. Yeah, I'm so excited to reread my story because I've added a few extra bits and pieces since I
don't know what it is.
Yeah, you can just pretend. Amnesia of the mind. It's fine.
Yeah, that's it. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning into this episode. Briefly, we'll just we'll touch on our episodes of what's coming up. So I've got a bit of a weird, creepy, cryptid one. I say creepy, more just, who knows? You'll find out when we get there. And Jordi, what have you got?
I've got a really awesome UFO story, which is super well known, and it's probably one of the most looked at cases, like UFO cases, for legitimacy for UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrials, because there were so many witnesses. It's really a lot of documentation. It's a classic story. Really excited. So very exciting. But if you are interested in following us on our social media, also we post photos from our stories each week on like Instagram and Facebook and all of that. So if anyone out there wants to follow us on any of our socials, we're Spooky Mountain Podcast pretty much everywhere. Spooky Mountain Podcast on Instagram, YouTube, where we post our episodes with the really cool visuals. We do have a Twitch account, but it is inactive at the moment because we're going to be eventually doing some gaming, some like creepy gaming and stuff, and
we're waiting for the right game to come along, I think, and the right
timing for it.
But that's there, just sitting there waiting for us, ready to visit. So
I'm really excited for that because I'm very much into like creepy gaming, but I hate creepy gaming by myself.
Yes, me too.
I cannot do it. I can't do it. I used to play Biohazard when I was playing a lot of like Xbox, and that used to just like freak me the fuck out. I would be up at like 1 a.m. playing and just totally creep myself out with it.
That's so creepy.
It's so creepy.
Honestly, the creepiest game I've ever played is probably Slender Man.
I've never played it.
It is so fucked.
Is it?
Terrifying. Because I think it's like, this was before the Slender Man arrival, when it was like 4 pixels on the screen.
Yep.
But when you got headphones in and you turn all the lights off and you're on a laptop, it is so scary. And I used to play, and we'd have like 1 or 2 of my friends like behind me, and we would still be so scared. There is so many funny reaction videos of people playing Slender Man, because he comes up so quickly and then everything just starts fuzzing out, and the noise is terrifying. But the Resident Evil games are pretty scary too.
Resident Evil,
they were really good. But there are some I have really wanted to play called, there's one where you go into like a old abandoned asylum and you have to like break in. Outlast.
Ooh.
Oh wait, is that called there is a game called Outlast. I think that's that one. And it's like, the camera kind of thing, and you have to look through the camera. It looks so scary.
Oh, I love it. I love scary games, scary movies. I love all. It's funny. I'm like such a horror enthusiast, but if you watch me like watching a horror movie, I've got like both my hands over my eyes, like
the blanket's halfway up your eyeballs.
Yeah, like, I'm scared shitless. So Resident Evil they're releasing a new game soon, I think. And this is I was trying to think of the name before, and it's Resident Evil. It looks so scary. I'm pretty sure it's Resident Evil that they're releasing a new game.
Is that the one that came out with the? I think it's already come out.
Oh, maybe they already released it. But
I haven't played it since I think Resident Evil 5 was the last one where they were in Africa. Which is like 10 years ago, over 10 years ago.
Oh no, there's definitely like a newish one, because I saw a trailer for it or some like gameplay or something for it the other day, and it was like the most horrific monsters and like mutated beings.
Yes.
It was just, I think that's definitely one that we should play on Twitch.
That would be really fun. And one that isn't so scary but it would be really fun is where you play, I don't know what it's called, but you could be a little cat and it has a backpack, and you run around this like town and do little missions.
And you do cat things.
Really yeah, you just be a cat and just hang out.
I have been wanting to.
Like apparently,
it sounds like such a basic game, but apparently this game is amazing. I want to play it so badly.
It's so cute. The cat with a backpack.
Keeping with the theme of Friday the 13th and scariness, do you have a favorite scary movie?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's not really one I always go back to. Well, actually, that's a lie. I love The Exorcist.
Oh, the original Exorcist.
The original is just a classic.
It is a classic.
I absolutely love that movie. I really love that movie. And also, I mean, this is more, I guess, horror, but Last House on the Left.
Oh, I've never seen that one.
The one from the 70s is intensely weird. But I mean, I like more psychological thrillers as well. Like some really ones that just kind of fuck you up. And of course, like Hereditary, and there's a lot of movies that I haven't watched a really scary movie in a while. I don't think. I've been watching a lot of TV shows that have been pretty intense.
Yeah. There's some really good horror shows like TV at the moment, which I'm really happy about, because I feel like in the past that's never really been a thing until the era of like Netflix and stuff. So I will always answer my favorite horror movie with this answer. It's a movie called Rose Red. It's originally a Stephen King story, a Stephen King novel. And it was adapted into a movie, I think like in the late 90s, early 2000s maybe. And I used to own it on DVD. And the movie is so long that it was 2 DVDs that you had to watch. But it's actually really interesting. So the story was based off a real house, which you've probably heard of, a real house in America called the Winchester Mystery House. Yeah, it's based off it's a fictional story.
The Winchester house where all the weird rooms and...
Yeah, it's awesome. A story based off that.
I didn't know there was a movie.
Yeah,
That's cool.
It's called Rose Red. It's really creepy. Like, it's a bit outdated now in terms of like, the effects and everything like that. But yeah, so that's my favorite. It's not super scary these days, but I would say the scariest movie I've seen is maybe Hereditary. Yeah, Hereditary's probably, or the one that fucked me up the most.
Yeah, that scene.
The scene.
I mean, that's always the scene I'll go to in my head of fucked up things.
Even just...
But I've seen some fucking weird movies back in the day. Like, me and my best friend, the time of, Civic Video and all that, when you could buy 5 weekly movies for $5 kind of thing. And we'd just go through the horror section. There was one movie called Mum and Dad. And it's not well known at all. It's so disturbing, and it's about these 2 people that live in this fucking dodgy looking house right off the Heathrow airport, and these travelers that are coming from the airport, they kidnap them and they keep them in the house and pretend that they're their kids, even though they're like 20, 30-year-olds.
That's so strange.
And then these people, like, you know, it's like weird contraptions and the whole house is all boarded up. But there's this one scene that I will never forget. It just got so intense, and one of the dads, like, cuts one of the girls' vaginas.
Oh my gosh.
Out,
oh my god!
Like, literally.
Oh, that's horrible.
And I like, they were not like trying to avoid the shot, or else just like, this is.
Oh wow!
Absolutely wild, and I just was not prepared for it. And you know, like any Lars von Trier movies, like Antichrist. Have you seen that?
I was just gonna say that. Yeah. That's kind of what this is reminding me of a little bit.
It's exactly like that sort of intenseness, and you just kind of like all of a sudden hit with that.
Yeah, that image.
It was intense. So anyway, there is a few.
I feel like this is kind of on a different level, but with Hereditary, like the scene that I'm sure if you just say like the scene, everyone kind of knows like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It kind of has that shock factor. It's not just a cheap shock, but it's like something that just chills you on the inside. Like it chills you to the bone.
It really was like the deepest, most uncomfortable, strange feeling I've had in so long watching a movie. I was
such a gross feeling.
And it was weird because I remember me and my boyfriend actually had to stop the movie for like a couple minutes, and I remember just sitting there going, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I've ever done that before.
No, I've never done that, and I had to do something similar like when I was similar in a way. Like I watched the movie and then it took me probably like a year or so to watch it for the second time, when usually
I haven't even done it.
It's a lot. It almost gave me,
but it took me ages to watch it in the first place. So
have you ever seen Midsummer? Yeah, I love that movie.
Yep.
That's
really good.
Same person who made it.
Yeah,
there's a scene in that movie that kind of made me feel the same way as like the scene in Hereditary. It's when the elderly people come off the cliffs.
Horrifying.
Horrible. That was a bit more like graphic.
That movie, like, I mean, it's incredible, but the like just from the beginning when she's hysterically crying, that made me feel so uncomfortable. Yeah. And throughout the whole movie, it's preparing you for something, and you don't know what it is. Every fucking scene, you're like,
something's gonna happen.
Yeah. When is it? And you're like, oh, the old people, they're weird, but okay, no, that just happened.
Yeah, it can almost give you anxiety. In a way, like it can be almost just a bit stressful, and not in like a fun horror way.
I was very stressed out. Yeah. It wasn't. I felt exhausted after that movie, but at the same time, I was like, "Whoa, that was good." But I feel sick.
Yeah, it's on really the inside.
I need to lie down.
I need to have a nap. So, speaking of creepy things, there's been some creepy things happening in my house lately.
Yeah,
some very interesting things. So for those listening, I have almost 1.5-year-old daughter. Her name is Panda. So when Panda goes to bed at nighttime, we have a monitor that is, connected to a camera, and it watches over her. And I've been hearing things on the monitor at nighttime, and it happened again last night. It happened again last night. It happens about once a week or so, or once every few days. It happened again last night, but the most prominent time that it happened was, I think it was like the first time or the second time that I noticed it. I'm pretty sure it was the first, and I heard what sounded like a goat on the monitor, and
that's normal.
It was fucking weird, and like just that. The goat, like, I don't know. I always
like the goat making a noise, or like the trotting as well.
It was kind of like a goat bleating. Is that the word, bleat? Like,
it was like a kind of
voicey goat thing.
Yeah.
And I've heard what sounds like her, like, very obviously noises that, like, my daughter makes, but she's just, like, fast asleep. And she's, like, at an age where she doesn't really talk in her sleep or anything, so it's not that.
Yeah.
And which also freaks me the fuck out, because in my head I'm like, is there something in that room that is, like, mimicking her to kind of like catch my attention, or to deceive in some kind of way?
Didn't even think of
I
something
know,
like that.
I know. There's been a few weird things like that happen with the monitor, but there's been other weird stuff in my house happening as well. Even though I very much get the feeling that it's not haunted, I really have experienced, like, a lot of things here and there that just really fucking weird, like footsteps around the house and things like that. But yeah, it definitely doesn't have, like, a creepy haunted vibe. It's just, weird stuff happening.
And this is the only house that she's lived in as well,
Yeah, it's the only house that she's lived in. Like,
so
the other night also, I don't think it was on a night where I heard a sound over the monitor, but I was I was laying in bed, I was awake, and I thought I felt the blanket move on my feet also. And I don't know, maybe it's just that room. I don't feel super creeped out in there, but also this is the only room that it happens, but my phone will just, like, randomly turn off. Only in that room. It won't happen in...
That is... Like a little demon's just like, you don't need to wake up in the morning and turn your phone
Get off
off.
Candy Crush.
Get off Candy Crush. You don't need it, trust me. Oh, that's so weird.
It's strange. It's really strange.
That's a weird thing about moving into older houses that you're not familiar with. Like, I live in a pretty old house, but there's nothing... I don't think there's anything here. We thought at the start, maybe it's more Dylan than me, but there's one of the bedrooms at the front. It's a really strange bedroom. I really don't like it. Yeah, so there's 3 bedrooms. When we moved in, because we're renting, there's these giant, big, old cupboards in each room, like the real old school, like mid-century ones. The one at the front room's like very dark wood, and the whole room is covered in this airplane wallpaper. Like pristine. Like, it's insane. It looks like it's just been put up, but it's definitely been there since like the 60s.
Wow.
It's crazy weird. And then there's this one window that looks out to the front yard, but they've put this weird tinting on the window, so not much sunlight gets in. So it's pretty dark in there. I absolutely hate it. I really don't like that room. The Dylan's just, that's his room, you know, has his like laptop in there and has work clothes and stuff. But he always says he gets this weird feeling in there. He's like, like when he's sitting in there, it just feels a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And there was this old couple that were living here before, and he thinks like, I reckon the old guy died in that room for sure. Because every other room feels fine, but he's like, that room. And I don't even go in that room, like, full stop. I just don't. And I didn't really think too much about it. I still don't really, but yeah, for him, he says he's uncomfortable, but nothing else has really happened. Oh, actually, no, that's a lie. There is one weird thing that happens. We've got a tap on the side of the house outside for like our hose, and it randomly decides to work and not work. And we thought it was a plumbing issue, but we've had it looked at and they're like, no, it's fine. Like, it works when they're there. And then sometimes just turn on the tap and nothing happens. But everything else in the house works. It's on its own thing. And we're just like, is it a ghost thing? We don't know.
That's really strange.
It just doesn't make sense. Like,
yeah, that room sounds like it would creep me out as well. And like, if it's a kind of, I don't know, sometimes, like, because I do like to be kind of like as skeptical as possible. I like feel like we can create a lot of kind of like feelings when it comes to like paranormal stuff. And I feel like if a room looks creepy, it's kind of gonna make it feel like there's something there. But I very much believe that we can also like pick up on things that are kind of happening that we can't see. So it's kind of like, what is your boyfriend's like stance on the paranormal, and like where does he kind of fit on the spectrum of things?
He's had an experience himself when he was young. He saw a young boy ghost when he was asleep. Yeah, he was currently living in a really old house. It used to be, it was right next to this school, but the house that they lived in used to be like where the principal used to live or someone. It's, I don't know, very old house. But he said he was lying in bed at night. He must have been like maybe 8 or 9 or something, and he was lying in his bed on his side and looking directly down the hallway, and he said he opened his eyes and there was just a boy in like this old-fashioned like clothing just standing there.
No.
And he was just completely frozen. And he's just like, that's like the one experience he has, and he's just like, I know exactly what I saw. I know I was awake because I stayed awake I was just awake. We even went to the Q station, the quarantine station, for my birthday, because that's just the best birthday gift anyone could get. It was perfect. I was terrified the whole time, and he was so confident, just walking through everything. And he's like, "Oh, I don't really," There was one part where we went to this really creepy house, and he was like, "Okay, that was a bit creepy," but I was shitting myself the whole time.
It's a creepy place.
Yeah, and even though he's had his own experience, But yeah, I think paranormal, yes. Very skeptical though. Aliens, yeah, boy, they're real. Cryptids, who knows?
Yeah, that's a good mix. That's a good mix of like skeptibility and like, I feel like if you've seen something, there's no way that you can.
That's it.
I suppose you could be, a denier, but I don't know. I feel like if you've seen something, there's no turning back.
That's it. Like for me, I never really thought too much about ghosts until I saw them, and I was like, oh man, all right, well, that's like, I can't.
So
really cancel
for
that.
those who listened to our first episode, we spoke about me and Steph living in the same house together that was really haunted. And we kind of touched on Steph's experience with that. I kind of wanted to know, like, what was your most memorable experience that you had in that house? Like, is there one thing, because I know you experienced quite a bit in that house, do you have like one thing that really was just like, that was just the worst fucking thing that happened in that house?
It's hard to kind of pinpoint one thing. I just remember like absolutely hating the fact that I'd have to be home alone. It was so scary, and my bedroom was at the other end of the house of where the bathroom was, and I remember just every night I would be so scared to go to the toilet, like terrified. And I remember I would just close my eyes and I just perfected walking like touching my way through the house to the bedroom, to the bathroom, and then back. And I'd keep my eyes closed even when I was on the toilet. I would literally keep my eyes closed. I was so scared.
Oh wow, I know that feeling. I know that scared feeling, and there's nothing like it. That just utterly terrified.
Yeah, terrified. Yep. And like I remember there was this one night where I was home alone, and I went to the bathroom, and I thought I heard something out just outside the bathroom door, and I was so scared that I literally slept in the bathroom.
Steph.
We had this like nice little bar heater in there, and this like shaggy bathroom rug, and I was like, all right, I'm setting
this
up
is my
shop.
bedroom
and
for the
literally
night.
Turned the light on, turned the heater on, and I just fell asleep on the floor. And I was like, I'll just wait till the sun.
Fucking hell!
I was so scared. I'm like, I'm not going out there. I don't want to know.
Well, yeah. Imagine if you did go out and there was something there. That, you know what?
That's it.
This thing wanted to scare you.
Because my first experience was in front of the bathroom door.
Really?
And the very first thing I ever saw was me coming out of my bedroom, going to the toilet, and the lights are off, but it's in front of like this big window. And I remember the moon was coming through. It was like a clear night. I could see a black figure in front of the bathroom door, and I could see legs hanging. There was not touching the ground.
Are you for fucking real? This is, I just got shivers over my whole body. That is so much scarier than like something walking.
Yeah, so it was completely still. And I looked, I was just staring at the legs going, what is happening? It's not touching the floor. And then I looked up and the rest of it, okay, this sounds really weird, but this is what it looked like to me. So the bottom half was like a man and legs. The top half looked like a kangaroo.
Wow.
It was very weird, and it looked like it was being hung.
Oh, wow, that is so strange.
It gets really dark, actually, because we actually had someone come and like check out the house and stuff, because that was the very first thing I saw, and I told my mum about it, and we just kind of like dismissed it, and it was a bit strange. And then later on, my sister, who didn't know about that experience, saw the same thing and told my mum. And yeah, it was really weird.
That's
but
so
yeah,
strange.
It literally just looked like someone was just being hung in front of the door. But it was weird because the top half didn't look
human.
Like human. I remember just it having like a big head and a big chest, but I couldn't see any arms or anything.
That's so strange.
It was so
Do you think that, I don't want to like freak you out or anything, I'm sure you've already had this thought. Do you think that because of this kind of like human animal crossover that it could be something darker, not human? It could be something like, because there's, been reports of like people who have seen like demonic stuff, and some people see kind of like human legs but animal kind of qualities to that.
The thing is, like, this is going to get pretty dark, because I'll tell you what this woman said. So we had a lot of things at this point for years, a lot of stuff happening in the house where it was getting really bad. And at the time, me and my sisters were all teenagers. So, apparently that's the thing that can just, that bad energy feeds off.
I have heard this also, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it was, myself, my two younger sisters, and then my best friend was living with us as well. And then there was my mom. So it was 5 girls living in the house, all angsty as fuck. Like, it was just a really chaotic time. And me and my mum got to the point where I was like, okay, we can't. Everyone's just freaking out. There was all these things happening. We all had experiences. So we went to go find this woman. I'll need to ask my mum about this, but we went to find this woman locally who, was like, yeah, I'll come and look at the house. We didn't tell her anything. So I remember we went in there and all she asked us was what the address was. And we said, yeah, like we've all experienced a lot of stuff. We're all feeling incredibly uncomfortable. We don't know what to do. And we're just kind of open to seeing if anyone else is experiencing it, like that's out of the picture. We don't want to tell you anything. And she was like, no worries. How about I come around next weekend? And yeah, so she came and she was talking about, like, a lot of it was, like, she was really nice, but yeah, I remember she was saying, like, you need to bury like a quartz crystal in like the middle of the location, and then blah blah blah, and then she was walking around the house, and it was pretty weird. Like, when she walked into the house, so we didn't say anything. First thing she did is walk straight to the front of the bathroom door, and she was just like, oh my God. And I remember just like looking at my mom, and I was like, are you kidding me? And she was like, okay, has anyone had an experience here? And me and my sister were like, yeah, we have. And she goes, okay. And then she walks into the bathroom, and we're all in there. It's a very tiny bathroom. We're all just standing in there. And she was just like, kind of just had her eyes closed. And she was like, can you hear the water? She's like, there was a river here. Huh. There was a really big river, and there was a massive tree. There was a really big tree where the door is, because there used to be a big farmland before the house was there. And she was like, there was a man. She said there was an Aboriginal man that came to this property, and he actually got hung in this tree because he stole someone's sheep.
No way.
And I remember feeling so sick and so uncomfortable when she said that. I was like,
yeah.
oh, okay. She goes, this is where, like, literally right where it happened.
And this is what you saw.
It's what I saw. We didn't tell her either. And there was a few other things I was like, oh, it's not really too accurate. But that terrified me.
That is terrifying.
That when she said that. And that's, yeah, well, I mean, that was the very first thing I saw, and so many other things in between, which, you know, I'll save for a later day.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean.
It's a lot because I feel like it's so such sad. A violent way to die also. I feel like, you know, the ghost world exists and we, you know, come back in one way or another. If you leave this world in that kind of violent way, it's, you're definitely going to come back because you're pissed. But also, like, I know back in the day, like, a lot of, like, black fellas and stuff were really kind of, like, killed over, like, reasons that didn't really exist. Like, they were blamed for a lot of stuff. So, like, for a sheep,
like, come on.
It's, there's a lot of, like, just a little bit off subject. I know there's a lot of, like, locations in Australia that are kind of, like, significant Aboriginal locations that are kind of known to be quite haunted also. Because I think also, like, the Aboriginal culture is such a strong one spiritually also. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like it all ties in together.
And I was wondering, like, is there a significance to why I saw a kangaroo?
Well, that's another thing, like, also, you know, like, animals.
That part was weird.
For sure. Like, animals are such a, like, significant, also, like, so important for, like, Aboriginal people because, like, you know, it's literally everything, food, like, clothing. It's everything. It's everything. So, but also, like, the connection, a lot of like, Dreamtime stories are purely connected to, like, animals as well. So there's, like, a huge significance with that. So I don't know. It's really interesting. I do kind of feel like, though, that it was I don't know, maybe this person was just so pissed off that it definitely kind of gave the impression of, like, a dark presence, or maybe it was a dark presence. I don't know.
I didn't feel like a dark presence when I saw it. I just, like, it was a scary thing to see, but it didn't feel like demonic or anything. It was just like, oh my god, what?
Yeah, because it's shocking to see. Like, do you feel like the legs were human-sized legs? Did they look like human-sized legs?
Yeah, they were like human-sized legs, like just like a man's legs.
Wow.
And it was probably like a foot off the ground. Like, that's how high it was.
Oh,
it was weird. Like, very close to the ceiling. I remember, like, the head was very close. But, you know, all the other figures I've seen in the house, they weren't, I don't think that was him at all. The different ones. And my mum's had an instance with a man in her room before as well, and I don't think that was him either. So it's just lots of different things.
Yeah, maybe it's just a place that spirits can come through. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, should we
we're going
Steph's
into a
story?
We're going a lot more lighthearted now with this story.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to be talking about the legendary Loveland Frogman, one of Ohio's well-known cryptids. Is it a monster, alien, or an escaped pet iguana? Also, no.
I'm trying so hard. I'm like bright red right now.
Oh, shit. Also known as the Loveland lizard, it's been described as a humanoid frog that stands about 4 feet tall and has been allegedly seen in Loveland, Ohio. The bipedal frogman has been seen on a few occasions, but I'll be sharing with you 4 of the most famous ones. First one is in 1955, then there are 2 in 1972, and the last one was in 2016. So in all sightings, they have noticed the same features: leathery skin, webbed hands and feet, head of a frog, standing about 1 meter tall. And the first story I've got is the one that begins in 1955. So on a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Miami River in Claremont County, just on the outskirts of a small town known as Loveland. Now, this is where the story starts to diverge into three different retellings. So the first story goes like this. The driver was heading out of Branch Hill neighborhood when his headlights shone on three figures standing in the middle of the road. Standing fully erect, the man honks his horn and the frogmen perk up, twist their necks around, look at him, and then the driver just drives off really fast. The second story, so this other version goes, the driver was driving along the same road, spots the frogmen under the Loveland Bridge, so one of the many bridges over the Little Miami River. The driver honks his horn at them. The creatures shoot out from under the bridge. One lands on his hood and croaks at him. And then the driver passes out. And then for the last outcome of this similar story, a businessman claimed to have witnessed three bipedal reptilian creatures gathered by the side of the road. The man pulled his car over to the curb. Then he observed these creatures for what he estimated to be about 3 minutes. During this time, he noticed that these strange beings stood upright between 3 to 4 feet tall. They were covered in leathery skin and had webbed hands and feet. Their most noticeable characteristic, however, was their distinctly frog-like heads, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where their hair should have been. The frogmen were in deep conversation, he reported. Then the driver yelled at them. One of the frogmen looked at the other one and pointed at the driver. Just as the man was about to get out of there, one of the creatures suddenly held what the witness could only describe as a wand above its head. A large amount of sparks then flew out of the wand, and the driver fled as fast as he could. Oh my God. Okay, now the next two alleged sightings, these are around 20 years later, so 1972. The first incident took place at 1 a.m. on a clear and cold night. Officer Ray Shockey was en route to Loveland when he thought he saw a dog beside the roadway in a field. When he looked closer at the creature, it stood up and saw its eyes being illuminated by the patrol car lights. The creature looked at him for a second, turned and leapt right over the guardrail. Officer Shockey noticed when it jumped over the guardrail, it went down an embankment and into the Little Miami River. He described the thing as weighing about 27 kilos or 60 pounds, standing about 3 to 4 feet tall and having a textured, leathery skin and a face like a frog or a lizard. Shockey drove straight back to the station and ended up returning with Officer Mark Matthews to look for evidence, but could only see the scrape marks left on the embankment. 2 weeks later, on St. Patrick's Day, Officer Matthews was driving just outside of Loveland when he had a very similar incident. He noticed up ahead on the road an animal lying down as if it was hit by a car. Matthews pulled his car over to inspect the mysterious lump, assuming it was roadkill. As he opened his squeaky car door to get out, the creature got into a crouching position as if he was about to play football. The animal hobbled to the side of the road, lifted his leg over to the guardrail, keeping his eye on Matthews the entire time. Now, the next part could have been due to having it having a stupid little smirk on its face, but Matthews took a shot at the creature. However, he did miss it, and the creature vanished down the embankment like before. Later on, Matthews said he had felt the creature stood more upright than Shockey had reported. And these two men took a lot of flack for these sightings, and the town became a bit of a joke. Years later, in 1999, Matthews explained to the local media that he was sick and tired of talking about the frogman, and that what he had seen was someone's escaped pet iguana. But at the time, both witnesses definitely saw something that looked like an upright man-like lizard. And there's the matter of the sketch. Officer Shockey's sister drew this for them shortly after their first experience with the creature, and it clearly looks like a giant frogman. Go check out the Instagram post because that's where I've put up that image. It's hilarious. And the latest known story is from 2016. A Cincinnati TV station reported that a night of fun turned into a chilling tale of horror. This was a time that was a very special time to a lot of people under the age of 30. It was a time when Pokemon Go was released on smartphones. There were people walking everywhere, looking for these digital creatures at all hours of the night, including myself, might I add. But the reason why I mention this is because a couple of teenagers named Sam Jacobs and his girlfriend, who chooses to stay anonymous, were out doing this when they came across a real-life monster. They were between the Loveland Madeira Road and Lake Isabella when Jacobs said, "We saw a huge frog near the water. Not in the game. This was an actual frog." They then stopped playing the game so they could document what they were seeing with their phone. There is a 10-second video on YouTube that they supposedly recorded of this frog and a couple of photos as well. So check those out. Jacob stated, "Then the thing stood up and walked on its hind legs. I realize this sounds crazy, but I swear on my grandmother's grave, this is the truth. The frog stood about 4 feet tall." The couple then raced back to Jacob's girlfriend's house and told their parents. That is when they told them about the locally known cryptid. So those are the most popular stories that always seem to be changing every year by just a little bit, and every article's just a tiny bit different. So it was a little bit hard to write those, to be honest. But now a really cool thing that happened is, well, to this cryptid that a lot of the other ones don't receive is a musical. In 2014, Hot Damn, It's the Loveland Frogman was a bluegrass musical about the disappearance of a strange old man that rekindled the hysteria surrounding America's most alluring cryptozoological phenomenon. Oh, that word is so hard to say. I'm not a musical fan at all, but I would 100% say this one for sure. There was also a novel called The Man from Primrose Lane by James Renner. That's about a man investigating the mysterious murder of a man in his reclusive home. The man comes across lots of strange coincidences that all lead back to this murdered man. And one of the odd characters he comes across is the Loveland Frogman. Only briefly, but yeah, thought I might just add that in too. It seems like the locals are a little bit mixed on the feelings of this cryptid and story, as most receive festivals. They have a museum, they got stores, just like the Mothman in Point Pleasant, the Kecksburg Bell in Kecksburg, and the Jersey Devil. They've got many shops named after it, and also a roller coaster. But to be honest, this is not a cryptid I believe in. He sounds like a nice guy, a little bit cheeky sometimes. However, there's no American folklore that talks about a giant humanoid frog. So sadly, it is a bit hard to believe. But yeah, that's the fun little story of the Loveland Frogman.
I love this story. I love this story so much. It's fucking hilarious. Oh, it took so much to hold back
I know, it's so hard.
Laughing, like in a good way though, like in a,
it's ridiculous. A good way, of course.
It's ridiculous, but it's just so, like, there's so many levels of hilarious to it. Like, it has a musical. It had a wand at some point.
There's nothing about this frog. It's the one cryptid where I swear there's like literally they're holding on to what they can. There's literally only pretty much these are the only 3 stories I can find that exist, but they always say these are the only 3, like the famous 3. I'm like, I couldn't find any other
These are the only 3 that matter. So imagine what would have had to have happened in nature for this frogman to be created.
It is terrifying to think about.
So terrifying. And it makes me think also, in part of this story, you spoke about someone seeing him walk on its hind legs. But does it, if it's walking on its hind legs, is it kind of hopping on its hind legs, or is it like stepping 1 foot at a time?
That's a good point.
Or is it kind of like hopping along with his back legs?
Point. Yeah.
Or is it where the man part comes in that he's able to just like take a step.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even want to think about it. It's so creepy. I mean, I'm not
so
much
creepy.
of a frog person, but like this, the one with the wand excites me. I like the wand one, and
it's exciting.
Just having them like in this little huddle, like having a little conversation, and then like coming across that is hilarious. But having one by itself, if you're alone in the middle of the night, is terrifying.
So terrifying.
It's like, yeah, I'd rather see like a group of them and be like, mad? What is happening? What are they talking
Frog
about?
People. The one with the wand is kind of like a frog person Harry Potter crossover.
Yeah. But what does it even do with the wand? Like, it's so
yeah, that is so bizarre. But you're right in your story. Like, you know, so many towns in mainly America, if there's some kind of like phenomena that happens there, they fully milk that shit. They've got like the stores, the signs,
all these small towns
everything.
Are bringing in so much money from these stories, but I think they're just honestly embarrassed about this one, and they're like, please don't come here about it. But yeah, what's your story?
My story is something, so it's a story that's quite well known. I feel like a few people have probably already heard of this story. Rua, Zimbabwe is one of the most seemingly unlikely locations for one of the most curious and talked about UFO and alien encounters that we know of. And if it weren't for the 62 children who witnessed what happened, it would be hard to believe it to be true. A little bit of background on Rua. It is a larger city in the country of Zimbabwe with a population of, I found different numbers. It's so hard to find any information on this place. So I saw one source say that it has 25,000 people. Another source said 50,000. So between 25 to 50,000 people. So it's kind of substantial. It now serves as a small kind of like a trading center for the surrounding mixed farming areas, and also is the location of the Rua Rehabilitation Center for disabled ex-combatants. Other than this, and also the information on the story I'm about to tell you, there really isn't much information out there on this area at all. It really has just existed in the public eye because of this story. If you type Rua, Zimbabwe into Google, essentially all the results are websites on the Rua incident. So if you type this in, like when I was researching this story, there's like a very small Wikipedia blurb, essentially. And then everything after Wikipedia is just all on the Rua incident. So what actually happened? The morning of 16th of September, 1994, began like any other morning for the children and teachers of the Ariel School in Rua. The teachers were in a weekly scheduled meeting while the children enjoyed the morning recess in the schoolyard. Even though there was one lone parent who ran the tuck shop, who was supervising the kids, they were all left to their own devices in the yard. It was a Friday, the last day of school before the weekend, and the children were playing normally like any other kids you'd see in any other school. However, an incident during this morning recess would ultimately capture the attention of the entire school, the entire country, and then the entire world. That day, in total, 62 children between the ages of 6 to 12 would tell their teachers that spaceships had landed next to the school. All the kids present there that day reported that they saw one main silver flying disc or orb-shaped craft with 4 other orb crafts around it. The unidentified crafts came down on a hill beyond the schoolyard that was out of bounds from their play area. The boundary was the edge of the schoolyard, then it was bush, and then a hill sloping downwards. Within seconds, a hush spread over everyone there as each child turned their attention to the gleaming objects. When the school kids saw the crafts land down the hill, they ran to the edge of the boundary to see what this thing was. As they observed the craft, a small man, as they called it, around 3 feet high, suddenly emerged from the disc-shaped object. The children would later describe him as extremely thin and short, with long black hippie hair and very large black eyes. He levitated down from the craft and began walking in the direction of the fence where the children were watching. Perhaps they let out a collective gasp, as only after a few steps he seemed to even notice the children were standing there, and he stopped walking. Meanwhile, another figure stood watching from on top of the craft at the same time, then slowly levitated down himself to the ground. The main being stood in place and gave what many of the students described as deep and unbreaking direct eye contact. Some students said that they instantly felt an overwhelming feeling of total hopelessness and despair. Some kids actually passed out, and some simply just screamed. This is interesting, as many of the kids, almost all of them, said that the small being made direct eye contact with them, which by regular standards would seem impossible to have this eye contact with so many people at one time. This is interesting, as many of the kids, almost all of them, said that the small being made direct eye contact with them, which by regular standards would seem impossible to have this eye contact with so many people at one time. Both of the beings appeared to levitate back to the craft before the craft itself simply just disappeared, as did the smaller crafts that were still flying overhead nearby the landed orb. After the crafts disappeared, the children continued to scream and then scrambled to their teachers to report what they had seen. After the incident, the first person on the scene, other than someone related to the school or the kids, would be Cynthia Hind, who at the time was a UFO researcher and author. She also contacted Dr. John Mack, who was a psychiatrist, a writer, professor, as well as being the head of psychiatrics at Harvard Medical School, the same school that he was educated at. So Dr. Mack was a very distinguished and educated man who was extremely respected in not just the world of psychiatrics, but also within Harvard, which is really saying something. He agreed to visit the school with Cynthia to investigate the incident, and after the two arrived, they interviewed each child individually. It was apparent that every student that they spoke to shared the very same detail in the exact same order that it happened, with very little variation in what they were saying. Dr. Mack said after interviewing the children that, quote, they describe these events like a person talks about something that has really, truly happened to them. As a seasoned psychiatrist, Dr. Mack was truly an expert on human behavior and body language. Majority of the children who witnessed the craft and the beings told Dr. John Mack that they received telepathic communication from the dark figure who stood in front of them, and this telepathic communication would lead to some very interesting revelations for the children. One of the students would describe the experience as, all of a sudden, it was just like visual images were going through my head. Emily Trim was one of the young witnesses who claimed that telepathic images started coming to their minds, something she would further describe as communication through the eyes. Trim would further state, years later as an adult, that it appeared to her as though some kind of energy had surrounded them during the encounter that appeared to stop time. She said that during the time of the event, she could not be certain in terms of time as to how long the incident lasted for. Of the students who experienced telepathic communication, essentially all of them said that the messages they were given were ones of desperation and fear for the planet, the nearing of the end of the world, or an incoming techno-apocalypse. One student said that the message he received was that all the trees would go down and nobody would be able to breathe. A seemingly ominous warning for how humans treat the planet. Another child would tell Hind and Mac that the aliens had arrived to tell us that we don't look after the planet properly. Even darker images came from other children, with them saying that they had perfect visuals of the world burning in flames, clearly flashing through their mind's eye. This isn't the first time that such environmental issues have surfaced in close contact encounters and alien abduction. It is a reoccurring theme when people have reported alien encounters and to have experienced telepathic messages from beings. I think it's important to note that children of this area of the 90s came from essentially poverty due to civil unrest lasting for years and years, and they didn't have access to movie theaters or even really television to be able to watch sci-fi UFO movies or even horror movies. The internet was essentially not accessible by anyone at this point, by the general public, let alone Rua, Zimbabwe, which really eliminates any chance that the kids had picked up this story or concocted this story by any means of imagination, that they had been inspired by TV or something that they'd seen on the internet. In short, it's very unlikely that these 62 children are going to have impeccable recall memory with such similar accounts with essentially zero inconsistencies. It seems unlikely that this is just a concocted story created by infants who have probably never seen a TV show or a movie with a UFO in it before. So even though Dr. Mack was a highly regarded psychiatric professor, he was also a very experienced UFO and alien abduction researcher. And he mainly took on this research with a psychiatrist's point of view. He had researched many UFO and alien incidences before and also after the Ariel School experience. His research into this aspect of the paranormal really led to extreme criticism and insult towards the doctor from heads of faculty at Harvard and just generally his fellow peers too. He truly became alienated because he was determined to research this phenomenon further. Mack's contribution to the alien abduction and UFO phenomena is invaluable, and the fact that he would so strongly back the genuineness of the kids at the Ariel School should perhaps tell us of the authenticity of this account, as Mack was 100% adamant that these students were telling the truth and not fabricating any stories or lies. Up until his death in 2004, he maintained his stance on this. In fact, it's not only Dr. Mack who is sympathetic to the Ariel School students' experience. Other professors, journalists, government officials, and even the parents and teachers of the children believed what they were saying. A fact that adds even more interest to this case is that only 2 days prior to the Ariel School event, there was another sighting only 40 kilometers away at the Pierre House School. Approximately 100 school kids watched a strange silver flying craft described almost exactly the same as the disc seen at the Ariel School. They saw it descend extremely low and looking as though it was about to land. What's more, the radio system that the school bus service used went down completely during the exact time of the sighting. Cynthia Hind would also collect several reports of not just UFO activity in the Ariel area in the days leading to the incident, but sightings of strange creatures also. For example, in the days leading to the Ariel School event, a mother and her young son claimed to have witnessed a UFO in broad daylight. Perhaps the most unnerving of these sightings came from a truck driver who claimed to have seen strange beings on the roadside one night while he was driving. Something that is also very interesting is that it's reported that not long after the craft and the beings disappeared from the school, a group of mysterious men arrived to examine where the craft landed. According to one teacher of the school, you could see a burnt and blackened area of the grass where the UFO had been. I know I'm using a lot of quotes from witnesses and other people involved in this story, but this really is one of the most well-documented cases we have on UFO and extraterrestrial encounters in history, and I would never pass up an opportunity to use direct quotes from people who experience this thing in real life. It's not often that this happens with the paranormal. Although this may be simply put down to trauma from the event, or just the fact that this would be a significant event in all the children's lives, it is of interest that many of the kids who witnessed this bizarre event would claim to have suffered strange dreams and even nightmares ever since they witnessed the event. One such child would claim that she had nightmares of the strange figure that she saw in the trees that day, appearing instead in her room before it took me from my bed, as she said. Are these potentially further encounters after the original event, or are these kids so affected by what happened that it stuck with them for life, even during their dreams? One of the witnesses, only known as Sarah, would perhaps express this weight better than others when she claimed that not only does experiencing such an encounter brand you for the rest of a person's life, but it also leads to a permanent fear of these things returning one day. She would continue to explain during an interview with the Mail and Guardian newspaper that she could even sense when they came back into our atmosphere years later. Each of the students, who will now be in their 30s today, maintain that what they saw that morning was very real. Some of them who witnessed the strange black-clad figures close up further have said that they will never forget the creature looking directly at them in the eye. What's more is that not just those in the fields of UFO research, but many with expertise in child behavior claim it would be simply just unrealistic that so many children at such a young age would be able to agree and stick to the same story, and do so for such an extraordinarily prolonged amount of time. In short, there appears to be little doubt that the children themselves were completely honest in telling their telling of the events of that morning. These people who witnessed the encounter still recount their experience in the exact same detail as the day that they spoke to their teachers and Dr. John Mack. There have been numerous claims of UFO sightings at schools across the world. Do extraterrestrials feel more comfortable being around the innocence of children? Is it a case of imaginations just running wild? Perhaps it's a case of mass hysteria, which is what many people believe what has happened with the Ariel School incident, despite it not presenting typically as most other hysteria cases present. Or perhaps these 62 children have been just telling the truth this whole time.
Such a good story.
Yeah.
There's too many children to see something like that.
62
That's
children.
creepy.
And that is like I think I read that that's kind of like a minimum number. There's a chance that there was
and not
more.
even a single teacher, which is wild. Like no adults saw it. It's crazy. Oh my God. I mean, you gotta, to have that many kids see something that intense.
Yeah.
How could you not?
And just imagine, imagine what it would take to orchestrate 62 children to have the exact same story with no varying, really not much varying detail. And also Dr. Mack, he got the kids to draw their experiences as well, to do some illustrations, and all these kids' illustrations are exactly the same, pretty much exactly the same, down to the location of where just past the boundary it was, what the beings look like. It's all spot on. And for 62, I know, if at that age there's no way that I'd be able to stick with a story like that
and for the rest of my life as
well.
Yeah,
exactly. You'd think if these kids were making it up, at least one as an adult would be like, oh, by the way, we're just fucking with you.
And say someone did pretend to have a ship and pretend to be aliens. What happens with all the kids saying, the intense stares that they got from the aliens, the weird visions they got of like the future being destroyed or how we're destroying the planet. That is some really intense stuff to say as a child. And being from where they were at the time as well and not having access to any, internet or TV, they don't know that, like the pop culture at the time and these movies that are happening, like it's not on their radar at all. It's insane.
And I think also just the kind of like recurring theme of close encounters with aliens, like there is kind of like this thing that we hear people reporting if they've had encounters, which is like telepathic messages, like, and the messages being about the planet or the environment or humanity and stuff like that. So it's like there is that just generally like that reoccurring theme also with like other cases and like something that I noticed while researching this story is that there are so many alien encounters, or what seems like an alien encounter or a UFO encounter at schools. I don't know whether kind of what I said
too. There's a weird draw to them, and I don't know why. It's creepy. It's very creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy. And like maybe it is because children are kind of like our future, and so
they're trying to get them early. They're like, please save the planet.
Yeah.
Don't
like
listen to your parents.
Try and get the message into them while they can.
That was a good one. Oh, great.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I sounded a bit funny for anyone listening. I got my COVID jab just a couple of days ago, and I'm really sick from it, so I'm a little bit like disorientated.
You're doing well.
Reading my story, because I read my story off a tablet, and I was going into a trance. It was really hard to focus. So I might sound like a little bit of an airhead, but it's all
that might be me next week.
Yeah, go get your jabs, everyone.
Go get your jabs. Yeah, well, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please follow us on all of our socials. It'll mean a lot to us. It's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch if you want to. But also, if you could leave a review on any of the podcast apps you're using, that would be incredible.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be speaking to you then. Bye. This episode of Spooky Mountain was created and recorded on land of the original custodians, the Gundungurra and Bidjigal people. We pay respects to the past, present, and emerging mob. My name is Jordi, and I'm a proud Gunya woman. Thank you for listening.